Hey guys, welcome to the Ramsey Paul Show. It is Tuesday, December 9th. Christmas is coming. I hope you guys are all having a great week. And we got a lot of stuff to cover. And in case you want to leave a tip, Power Chat Live, Ramsey Paul, I do appreciate that. And if you want to write me, Paul Ramsey, P.O. Box 8093, Fayetteville, Arkansas 72703. And I encourage people to join my Substack. Every Tuesday night, we have a roundtable. Hey, tonight's Tuesday. We're going to have a roundtable tonight. It's for my Substack members, a way to say thank you. It's a more informal session. Again, thank you so much for your support. But no matter what, be sure to like and subscribe. All right. As you can probably tell from my thumbnail, I think the big news was Piers Morgan interviewing Nick Fuentes. And it was interesting because usually they don't want to interview people that have bad thoughts, so they just try to ignore them. But Nick Fuentes was hard to ignore ever since he did an interview with Tucker Carlson. And I got to be fair, Tucker Carlson actually did a interview, allowed Nick to explain his positions. And the rule is a sort of an unstated rule. When I used to do mainstream interviews, I saw this. If the mainstream's going to interview someone they consider to be evil or have dissonant thoughts, they will pretend that they're just want to understand your ideas. It's going to be a fair interview because that's what an interviewer should be. It's like, hey, I'm not trying to get my personal beliefs in this. My job as an interviewer is just to understand your beliefs. That's the way it should be in journalism. But journalists don't work that way anymore. They are defenders of the system. They are like commissars. They are prosecutors, especially if someone with bad opinions. So typically what happens when you get on a mainstream interview, they go into attack mode with a gotcha, I gotcha. And they'll show a clip, because if you do a lot of stuff over the years, like Nick Fuentes has done or myself, you joke around, you do a lot of different things. And then they find that their big staff, and then they use that as a gotcha, and they want you to apologize and go through a struggle session. And Tucker Carlson's greatest sin was he didn't do that. He actually gave a real interview with Nick Fuentes. I mean, Tucker said, I don't necessarily agree with Nick, but I'm not here to attack him. Let's just hear what he has to say. Because Nick Fuentes and his ideas appealed to a lot of people. You may say that's evil, but it's true. And so let's hear what he has to say instead of just trying to do sound bites. Well, Piers Morgan, he objected to that route. So he decided to do a more traditional interview where it's not really an interview, it's a debate. Whereas Piers Morgan and his whole staff behind him at the time were trying to attack Nick and do a gotcha. And I recommend watching it. It just went horrible for Piers Morgan just because I don't think Piers Morgan understood Nick. And the usual tricks that Piers Morgan does that works on most people didn't work on Nick. And it left Piers Morgan extremely confused. So let's watch just one clip and I can just go over a little bit. And there's a lot of great clips. I would say watch a whole interview, but here we go. Let's see, here it goes.
Point out to you that there are many parts of crime in America where actually there's a majority of white people that perpetrate them. You don't care. You don't have any interest in that. It doesn't exercise your mind. Maybe because
no one's buying this. This
kids.
argument lost. No one is buying this. Everybody understands per capita, and people can even see what you race ahead and say, well, we're comparing the proportion of white and black school shooters. I said, no, compare the proportion of school shooters that are white versus violent criminals that are black.
And this was an important point that Nick brought up, that Piers, he either was too stupid to understand, or more likely he didn't know how to respond to it. I know he had his whole staff with, he probably has the earpiece trying to help him in the background. But this is the argument that's made because it's statistically true. Blacks, especially young black males, by far create a disproportionate amount of violent crime, meaning muggings, carjackings, rapes, the whole bit. And we've seen this over and over. And it's just not in one city. It's worldwide this occurs. I think there's a biological reason for it. But according to the leftist fantasy view, race is just skin color. Everyone's exactly the same. And if, for example, you get on a bus and you see a young, thuggish looking black guy, and over here you see a 90-year-old Jewish woman, you have to treat them exactly the same. You can't make the rational thought, well, wait a minute, this black guy's more likely to mug me than the 90-year-old Jewish woman, because that'd be racist and sexist and ageist. But it's real. But see, this is the problem they get in. And so Nick is saying, well, yeah, what Piers is doing, and it's really frustrating. It's been so old. It's like, well, white people commit crimes too. Well, yeah, but not to the degree whatsoever. And Piers Morgan was bringing up school shootings. And by the way, most mass shootings in the United States are not white. That's the myth. Most mass shootings are committed by minorities by far. But when you talk about school shootings, which in relative terms are extremely rare, how does that compare, right? Because as Nick said, if people were really worried about white people, they wouldn't want to move out of the cities and go to white schools because the risk is very low. So how many white people end up to be school shooters? What percent? That's what Nick is asking. And Piers is acting like he's too stupid to understand that. It's like 0.00001% versus what percentage of young black men commit violent crimes. It's something like 1 out of every 20 end up committing murder in their life. Committing violent crimes is probably 25%. Not all, but it's a huge amount. As Irina found out, and it's just crazy. You really got to watch yourself. And it doesn't even make sense by people that live in the real world know this, right? And I know Piers Morgan probably doesn't know this. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, has private security, goes everywhere in limousines, and is protected. He lives in a bubble. But people that don't live in the bubble know this, right? You don't want to be around young black men because it's a risk. And Piers Morgan, oh, well, that's racist. That's racist. And what Nick said is, I don't care. You could call me racist if you want. That doesn't bother me, but it's the truth. And this really confused Piers Morgan because he's used to the paradigm that if someone admits to being racist, then you've won the argument and you've totally destroyed them. And I guess it's more risky in Britain because if you're racist, they'll throw you in prison. And that's where Piers Morgan is. But it doesn't work because people are tired of it because they're like, well, what do you mean by racist anyway? And Nick brought this up that all people probably are racist, however you want to define that term. The term is so sloppy because it's somewhat defined. Oh, only white people can be racist. Or what does it mean? All racist means is you prefer people that are like you. And all groups do this and we celebrate it. Black clubs, Jewish clubs, and Latino clubs. But if you do white, oh, that's racist. Only white people are set to a specific standard. And so it doesn't mean you hate other people, but you may not want to interact with them. Like, hey, if I had a choice, and let's just be honest here, probably you guys watching, would you rather get on a bus that's 100% white or 100% black? Honestly, late at night, I tell you right now, I would take the white bus every single time. And guess what? Even black people would take the white bus over the black bus. Jesse Jackson, years ago, he was a African-American civil rights advocate, but he said late at night and you hear footsteps running behind you. And he said, I was like, oh shit. And he turned around and he saw it was white guys and he felt relief because he was worried his black guys coming up on him. So this is reality. And we can pretend it's not true because it was racist, but it's reality.
That was the basis of the monologue, is that you're very likely, if you encounter black people or a young black man in the city, that you're going to be the victim of a violent crime, of a robbery, a mugging, a car theft, a carjacking, or a murder. That's the difference. And it's about proportionality. And everybody sees past that because we all live in reality. You want to talk about product of your environment. People that live in New York, Chicago, LA.
I would say anywhere. I've been here in Fayetteville, so same way. And it's just not murder. It's just aggressive behavior. If you live in Fayetteville, where Sasha used to live, it was more of a mixed area. And there'd always be blacks coming up trying to hassle you for a light or for money or something, way more than white people. I've talked to many women, and again, I've talked to Sasha in her life, the people that have exposed herself to her, like on a train or a bus, all black. For previous girls I've known were red pilled when they went to France. They were sexually harassed, not by Frenchmen, but by Africans. This is a constant. Now, it doesn't mean all blacks act this way, but a higher percentage of blacks act this way than whites or any other race. And again, it's not 100%, but it's still reality. And if you live in reality, you understand this. Now, again, if you're super rich, a Hollywood celebrity, or you like Piers Morgan or Tucker Carlson, where you have, security and you ride in limos and your exposure to diversity is a fabulous gay black man at your cocktail party, then yeah, your perception is different. But reality, people understand this.
We live in reality. We live in this environment and we see what it's like. And the threat, the danger in terms of probability it's not even comparable. And I would say this to your point. If you're in a high school and truly, if you see a white person who looks like a little autistic, he's got the SSRI stare and he reaches for a backpack, people joke and say, run. Similarly, if you see a jalopy pulling up with a bunch of black people in it and they got their pants around the ankles, you're going to run also.
Yeah. And this isn't just race. It's also based on sex and age, right? So if I get on a bus and there's a bunch of old black church ladies on there, yeah, no big issue, because there's a difference in age and in sex. Females tend to be less violent than men. Although interesting, black females actually create more violent crime than white men, but still compared to black men, it's a lot less. And then when you get into age, you don't really have that issue as much. So if you have like older black guys, say in their 50s or 60s, they're probably not going to give you a hassle. But if you have young black men, there's a high risk. They're either going to rob you, mug you, or hassle you, maybe murder you. Now, it doesn't mean it's 100%, but it's higher than if you see white guys. And it doesn't mean all white guys are good. And yes, there's horrible white people, Ted Bundy and all that. I mean, that happens, but that doesn't change the fact based on proportion. This is a key thing. So if you don't want to be around black people, it's not because of the skin color. No one cares about that. Leftists always bring that up. Oh, you just have an irrational hate for the skin color. I'm like, who cares? I mean, no one cares about skin color. They care about behavior that's associated with it. That's the thing. So if in general, young black man just sat politely on the bus or the train, didn't bother, didn't do funky dances, just sit there and read their book in peace, no one would give a shit. No one would give a shit. That's not what happens. That is not what happens. And people know that. And we're done pretending otherwise. So the dilemma is, oh, wait a minute, I see a potentially dangerous situation. Oh, but if I don't sit in front of this black guy like Irina did, oh, that'd be racist. I can't show to be racist. So she sat there, boom, knife in the back of her neck. He said, oh, that got a white bitch. She's dead, right? It's better to be alive and be called racist than to be dead, because this is just reality.
So, and I'm saying the same thing. The difference is, the latter happens much more often. It's much more common. In Chicago, there's like 10,000 carjackings and car thefts every day.
Yeah, and this is what's weird. Piers Morgan wants us to believe that all these violent crimes like carjackings, armed robbery, you're walking down the street and you get mugged in Chicago or any of these cities, it's mostly white men doing it. No, it isn't. There's almost zero white men doing it. In fact, the statistics show that, but even the statistics are skewed, because we've seen there's pressure on the police department. Like if you're, let's say, a Puerto Rican, they're going to call you a white guy. That's just what they do. So it's even lower than that. And people know that through lived experience. That's just the way it is. And I'm just asking you guys, your experience. Don't believe me. Don't believe Nick. Look at with your own eyes. And this is the point.
It's in the thousands. It happens all the time. How many mass shootings committed by autistic SSRI white people? I don't even know. I mean, it's probably in the single digits in the last decade in this city. That's the difference, and everybody knows that. But you're really just trying to carry water for liberal ideology.
No,
It's
I'm
an
not.
idea.
And that is 100% true. So what happened in this interview? It wasn't an interview, it was a debate, and it didn't really go well for Piers because Nick just had a sense of fun with it. And Piers Morgan, they have all these clips like all his staff got, and some of it was out of context, but whatever. But instead of denying it, Nick said, yeah, everything I said in that clip is true. And Piers didn't know. Whoa, what? So you're admitting you're racist? And he goes, well, fine. If you want to call me racist, I don't care. It's the truth. And Piers Morgan didn't know what to do because, see, and I'm not saying Piers Morgan is a conservative, but let's say conservatives, they believe in the same premise of the left. They really do. And that premise, since after World War II, no one really thought this before World War II, but that all people are exactly the same, right? There's no differences between the races except for skin color, which is ridiculous. If you've ever been around different people of different ethnic groups or races, they have different intelligence, they have different behavior, they have different values. That's just reality. But they don't want to believe that. They want to believe it's all environmental. And the same also now with men and women. It's just like men and women are exactly the same, except they have different sex organs, but otherwise they're just exactly the same. This is why we got the whole girl boss thing and the Hollywood fantasy that a 110-pound little girl can beat up a big, tough 300-pound man because girl power. It has nothing to do with reality. It's just the Hollywood fantasy that people want to believe in. And anymore, we're starting to and then they got into a little bit with, I guess, the ageism, which is ridiculous. Obviously, there's differences what you can do based on age, but it's just a denial of reality. But they're stuck in that paradigm. And since after World War II, we have like this religion that the worst thing you can be is racist, sexist, anti-Semite, now homophobic, maybe now transphobic, although that's not quite as bad. I guess in Britain, Islamophobic. They have all these things that you're a bad person if you believe in them. It's kind of like years ago in the Middle Ages calling you a witch. It's a witch. Kill them. It's the same type of thing. There's no thought behind it or anything. It's just words. So these conservatives, they sadly believe that premise. They really do. And they argue on the margins. And if they do make a point, it's always trying to flip the script like, the Dems are the real racist. And we see this all the time. So it's crazy. But so when you say something like that, you're basically affirming the false premises that the left holds. And I don't hold these premises. I don't hold that all people are exactly the same equal. There's differences between the races. There's differences between men and women. They're not the same. And the whole idea, whoa, you're supremacist. What does that even mean? I've often brought up the point, I love dogs. There's a difference between a German Shepherd and a Bulldog, and between a Poodle and a Lab and a Pit Bull. Right? They all have differences. Well, which one's supreme? Well, I guess it depends what you want. If you're tracking, I think bloodhounds are, I guess, supreme. If you're talking about racing, greyhounds would be number one. If you're talking about like police work, I mean, you could debate it. Probably a German Shepherd. If you're talking intelligence, you get the poodles, some of the sheepdogs. They're extremely intelligent dogs. They can be very hyper. So these dogs, they're supreme in different areas. They're all dogs, but they're different breeds, so they have different characteristics. And this is the way races are. They're different, right? And it's the same with the sex. Men and women are not exactly the same. Which are superior? What men are superior? Women are superior. Well, no, it depends on the function. When it comes to raising children and having babies, women are definitely superior than men. Men are good at having babies. Oh, that's transphobic, but it's true, right? And men are better in reason and don't let the emotions carry their minds. And again, there's exceptions, but that's the truth. So we have these different roles. and we accept them, but the left doesn't accept these. So this is the whole problem. So they call you all these names and they assume that you're scared to be these names. But once you're not scared to be these names and you're like, I don't really care, I don't really have to explain it to you. This is what's reality. This is what I believe is reality. And it really caught Piers Morgan by surprise. He didn't know how to deal with it. And he was trying to interrupt Nick a lot, the usual tactics, and he was getting all excited. And Nick was great because Nick said, hey, whoa, Piers, calm down. Just let me finish. Let me answer your question. And Piers is all, getting nervous. Because to be fair with Piers, if he doesn't do a hard interview, he could be arrested, right? Literally in Britain, he could be. So he's all scared. And it just went horrible. And you could see how old Piers Morgan was. He's not technically a boomer, but he acts like a boomer. His mindset is. And then you have a younger guy, and he just couldn't relate. And Nick, then Piers Morgan got onto the Holocaust thing, which is like the big religion after World War II. The Allies wrote, they wrote the story. And then you can't question it. And he was saying, "Oh, don't you believe in this 6 million?" He had all these clips. And this was the funniest part to me, is because Piers Morgan was too old and confused to understand what Nick was doing. Nick said, no, it's probably more than 6 million, 7 million, maybe it's 10 times as much. And Piers Morgan looked confused. Well, I thought you didn't believe that. Well, I guess that's good. Nick's like, yeah, maybe it's 100 times as much. We don't use this expression so much in America, but in Britain, they have an expression, taking the piss out of someone. And that means you're teasing them, mocking them. And that's what Nick was doing. And Piers Morgan was too confused to understand what was happening. And so that was pretty good. So I think most of the people watched. By far, the comments really supported Nick. And there's just no way forward anymore. If we're going to have homelands, if we're going to have a safe environment, if we're going to have a homeland for our people, we can't be trapped by all these racist, sexist, all these type of things, anti-Semitic. We have to be able to tell the truth. So it was a good showing by Nick on there. And there was it was a bad by Piers Morgan. It didn't really work for him. Now, a lot of people ask me about Nick Fuentes because I had my issues with Nick Fuentes, especially when he did his Kanye bit with that black guy that wore a Gimp mask and, praising Hitler. I'm like, this isn't a good look. And I still stand by that. But what Nick's doing now, I do support. And this is the way I am with everyone. And people get mad at me about this, but I don't worship anyone unqualified. It's always based on what they do. I have the same standard for Trump, right? I love a lot of stuff that Trump does, but when he does something that's bullshit, I will call Trump on it. I'm not a sycophant that will agree with whatever Trump does. I'm the same way with Nick. So when Nick does stuff that I think is very effective, definitely give him praise. I've always said Nick is a great communicator and he's pretty funny. Like when Piers Morgan was clutching his pearls about the Holocaust. How can you dare joke about this? And Nick said, what, too soon? Too soon? Piers Morgan didn't understand. It's been 80 years, right? So it was, I admire a lot about what Nick does. But again, there's been issues that Nick's done previously I haven't really been a big fan of. And also there's been suspicions of what happened on January 6th. When he was inciting basically people to go into the Capitol, and all these other people got arrested, but Nick didn't. And this has led to the charges or suspicions. Was he a paid informant? Nick denies it. Elon Musk says he is. I don't know. But all I can do is evaluate what people are saying. So it was a good interview. I would recommend you guys check that out. All right. I didn't want this to all be about Nick today, but it wasn't. That's how it kind of went. All right. We'll do a couple other stories here, though. This is an interesting story in Ukraine. Odessa well, let me show you this. The Ukrainians are short of men, and they draft young men. And here's the Ukrainian police on Odessa begin stopping and checking the documents of men in Jewish religious attire. This follows a recent trend of Ukrainian men disguising themselves in Jewish clothing to avoid mobilization. This means being drafted. Authorities apparently largely exempt Jewish community members. So, what happens in Ukraine? This happened at the start of the war. If you were a young man, you were drafted whether you liked it or not into the military. You couldn't leave the country. But the exception was if you were Jewish, you were welcome to leave the country. You weren't expected to fight. So Ukraine, and again, the leader of Ukraine, the dictator Zelensky, is Jewish, and they have a different standard. So if you're Jewish, it's just optional. You don't have to fight for Ukraine. But if you're a Christian, you don't have that standard. And it's just interesting how we're supporting a country that has that standard there. And it doesn't look like Trump is going to have to decide what to do. I hope Trump gets out of this whole Ukrainian war bit. Zelensky and all the Europeans are pushing Zelensky to reject the Trump's peace plan. And whether you like the plan or not, the reality, Russia is winning. Sevesk, there's another city, important city that looks like Russia's about to take over in Donbass. So Russia is winning. Despite the propaganda, Russia is winning. And Russia, their position is, we don't really care. We're happy to have a peace plan. But if you don't want a peace plan, that's okay. We're winning on the battlefield. And Europe, they have this whole thing because Europe, they have this hatred towards their population. They want to replace the white population, but they have to have an enemy. So their great enemy is Russia. So they want to fight to the last Ukrainian because it's not like they personally are fighting. And even Zelensky, he's not personally going to fight. So Zelensky, I'm sure he has a backup plan. If Kiev should actually fall, Zelensky has plans to leave the country with a suitcase of American dollars, probably head to Israel where he won't be extradited. And so that's his end game. So sadly, the war is going to continue. Many more Russians and Ukrainians are going to die, but they're white people. They're mostly white Christians. So Zelensky doesn't care. And most of the Western leaders, they don't give a shit. They hate whites. They hate Christians. So they're happy to see it. And it's going to continue. Now, if you have the peace plan where Ukraine gets out of Donbass, allows Russia to have it because the people voted to be part of Russia, you could have you're going to end up in the same situation either way. You either have the peace plan where you save some people, or you're going to have thousands of more people die, and we're going to have the same result. So this is what is happening too. Hopefully Trump understands this. Trump, like getting back to Fuentes, there's a lot of things with Trump I'm starting to like what he's doing. Some things I push back on, but this was pretty good.
Right is the immigration because he allows nobody in his country. And Poland has done a very good job in that respect too. But most European
Orban doesn't. Orban has kept their borders sealed.
Nations, they're decaying. They're decaying.
You can imagine some leaders in Europe are a little freaked out by what your posture is, and European.
No, they should be freaked out by what they're doing to their countries.
Right. They should be freaked out. They're bringing in all these people that are literally raping and killing their women and children, and they're not doing shit about it. That's what they should be freaked out about. And what they do in like Britain is if you complain about it, they just arrest you.
Destroying their countries.
Well, European Council
and
President.
they're people I like. Look, they're people I like. I get along with them. You know that. But they can't let this happen. And it gets to a point where you can't really correct it. There'll be a point, and it's very close to that point.
And what will that mean?
It will mean.
Well, it means those countries won't be European anymore, right? Because the people, the nation is not the geographic area, it's the people related by blood. And if you replace those people or genocide them, you don't have the same country. So you won't have England anymore. It won't exist. You may still call it England, but it won't exist. And you won't have Germans anymore. You may still call it Germany, but the German people will be wiped out, the ethnic Germans. Now, a lot of people, they support this. I'm sure the ADL and SPLC, they support the genocide of these people. They consider them a threat. I don't support that.
That they're no longer going to be strong nations.
Does
Or
that mean
they'll be-
they won't be allies
Or they'll
anymore?
be, well, it depends, it depends. They'll change their ideology, obviously, because the people coming in have a totally different ideology. But
They have a
uh,
different ideology, but they also, because they have a different biology. Your culture doesn't. There's not like some magic culture genie that gives every group of people a culture. It comes out of the people's blood, out of their genes. This is how it's an expression. Again, getting back to the dog analogy, I have a lab, a black lab. They naturally like to retrieve something. I didn't have to teach him that. It's just genetic in him.
it's going to make them much weaker. They'll be much weaker, and they'll be much different.
Yeah. And so a lot of liberals, well, it's good. It's good if we eliminate white people. No, it isn't. Then it will look like the countries they came from. You want to have a country that looks like Pakistan in England. No, obviously, even the Pakistanis don't want that. That's why they move in. So this is a huge thing that I think that needs to be looked at. So anyway, this has been a good show today. I wanted to go over a lot of stuff. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe. And I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.